Many hats today. Several passages of Scripture this morning, all talking about God who's seen in cloud or in pillar of fire. And it's talking about a particular kind of God. I mean, sometimes we think of God as the God that, saves us internally, the God who, is activated in the soul and lifts us into salvation in some future time. But that's not really what this God that's being described in these passages is about. This is a God of history. This is a God who intervenes in history. Now, for a guy who doesn't believe in miracles, that's kind of tough to say. We'll make that clear a little bit later, but we're talking about a God that actively engages in the creative process, in the human project. So would you listen for the Word of God, the Logos, as Spirit brings it to you. First from the book of Exodus. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was nearer. For God thought, if the people face war now, they may change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people by a roundabout way of the wilderness towards the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of the land of Egypt, prepared for battle, zealous. And Moses took with him the bones of Joseph, who had required a solemn oath of the Israelites, saying, God will surely take notice of you one day, and then you must carry my bones with you from here. They set out from Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And Adonai went in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light so that they might travel by day and by night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place from among and in front of the people. Later in the book of Numbers, on the day the tabernacle was set up, that's the place where Adonai came to live among the people. The day it was set up, the cloud covered the tabernacle, the tent of covenant, and from evening until morning it was over the tabernacle, having the appearance of fire. It was also so. The cloud covered it by day and the appearance of fire by night. Whenever the cloud lifted from over the tent, then the Israelites would set out, and in the place where the cloud settled down, well, the Israelites would then camp. And lest we think that this cloud disappears when we move into new covenant thought in the presence of Jesus the Christ, from the Gospel according to Matthew. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And Jesus was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. And so Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While Peter was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them. And from the cloud, a voice said, This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased. Now listen to him. Hear what the Spirit is saying to our church. When my boys were little, we had a cat. We actually had 2 cats, and, naturally you name them funny names when you have kids. The first one's name was Bruce. We called him Bruce Catstein. You may get the reference. The other one was Milo, and that was Milo the Wonder Cat, because she wondered where she was most of the time. Kind of like us. We wonder where we are most of the time. The future is murky for us. It's very difficult to divine our way through and understand what's coming next, or even how we got here sometimes. The future is murky. Barbara and I had a wonderful evening on Friday. We went to a party. And it was a party of friends of what we call the pod of kids that all grew up together. And so each year at this home in San Anselmo, there's a ping pong party and chili. And so we were all together, but this year was, of course, different because our boys had been away to college for a semester. And here they were all back, and these are good kids. A lot of fun. But you know, the future is murky. It's hard to let go of these kids. You know, we worry about them and concerned. They're all doing basically well. The major complaint is most of them don't like their roommate. You know, but most of them, on the other hand, have found good connections with people that they care about. And their one wish is, you know, that some of their high school friends will decide to transfer to their university come sophomore year. What do you say, Matt? Want to come over here? The parents are having a hard time letting go, though, because it's a murky future. And we're scared for them, of course. We had a discussion about it, and I was taking the voice of, we're kind of done with our job. You know, the pragmatic voice. I figure we're just done parenting. It's not that I can control the future much anymore. One of the other moms said, no, we're not done at all. We're still here to nurture them and guide them, and I suspect the truth is somewhere in between. But it is a murky future, and we do worry for them. It's cloudy. We wonder what's next. For ourselves, too, we wonder. A couple of us are having procedures or have had minor surgeries in the last couple of months, and that can be somewhat unsettling. There was discussion about what it's like to go through menopause, because, you know, these things move forward and make us wonder about what is next. And then in this particular group of people, there's an undercurrent of something that just stays with us all, and that is that there are two men missing. Two men who died when the kids were younger, about a year apart, both quite suddenly. And it is always there among us and making us wonder, well, what's next for any of us? There's a cloud over us. We wonder what the future is, just like Milo the Wonder Cat. Maybe you know what that's like? To not have a strong sense of what the future is, whether it's disease that might play in your life, where that's going to take you, whether it is your children or your grandchildren that you wonder about. I mean, it's quite disconcerting. We live in disconcerting times. The economic difficulties that we're in are broader than we even really focus on, because what is this about? It's about the restructuring of human society across the globe. And so jobs leave here and end up somewhere else, and money shifts around, and there are creaks and there are groans and little earthquakes in the financial markets as we walk through this time. And oh, what's going to happen when disasters begin to move into that picture? When whole populations have to move when glaciers melt? Because the fear that we feel, the unsettling, the murkiness, the cloud, it brings us sometimes to violence and war. Milo the Wonder Cat, we wonder where we are most of the time. And in the midst of this, the church is supposed to help? God? The church is in as much turmoil as anything else. Caught up in the difficulties and problems with trying to describe God in a world that A, has become way more educated than it used to be, and B, where you interact with people from all kinds of religions in a way that we never used to. And so the church has lost its voice, doesn't quite know its way, and that has an impact here, right? So with limited financial resources in this unsettling time, we try and find our way through, looking to see in the midst of that murky future what our direction might be. Where's God? And what the text says to us today is God is in the midst of the cloud itself. This is the God of history. This is the God that moves among us and moves history forward, moves real life forward. Now, I don't believe in a God that reaches in and fiddles with things. That's the way we usually think about miracles. That's a magic trick. I don't think that that's really what God's about. No, the brilliance and enormity of the presence of the creative power of God is that it moves things forward in spite of or within the laws of nature, so to speak. Guiding, shifting, shaping what the future is, carrying us forward in the midst of the cloud, sometime with brilliant flashes of fire and light that lead the way as we move through the cloudy wilderness. God, present in our lives, it's been true throughout history. Just look at the history of our country. We were built on an idea, on people leaving a place where they felt bound up, like they didn't have the freedom to become who they are, and they walk into this new land and try and find their way forward. Did they have it all thought out that they were going to form a democratic union? Certainly not. They wandered for a while, trying to figure out what gave them identity. History and actions of people from across the sea were part of what developed them and developed their image of themselves. I'm told Ben Franklin wanted part of the seal of the U.S. to depict the Exodus, the people of Israel going through the wilderness with the cloud in the midst of them. Now, admittedly, my source for that was a mystery novel, so you'll have to check to make sure. But there it is. And in times in history, the promise, that land full of milk and honey, that hope for what the future might be, has been threatened. And sometimes there's a brilliant flash of light. Lincoln was certainly a flash of light, understanding what destiny meant, understanding that lives and deaths could mean something as God shaped the future in the midst of the cloud when we couldn't see how to go forward. We're going to celebrate King's birthday next week as every year I preach a sermon of his. This year, Love Thy Enemies. But King understood that God wanted a freedom. He looked in the midst of the cloud and he understood the direction that God would take the people. And so he took risks and moved this country to a place that was more beautiful than it was before he walked the earth. That's the miracle of God, the miracle that works in the midst of history. And you understand what that means? That means that the presence of the Spirit of God, that cloud that surrounds us, touches each one of our lives and makes what we do worth something. It makes it part of the shaping of the new future, ever moving towards a deeper and more beautiful connection with the God who can only love us. It's a beautiful thing, this God, taking us from a place where we are confused to a place of greater holiness and greater hope. And it's trusting that in life and in death, whatever happens to our kids, whatever happens to us, knowing that our lives have value, our deaths have value, that gives us hope as we walk this earth. There is no need for us to be like Milo the Wonder Cat, wondering where we are. Because each and every one of us is in the presence of God. Just look around you.